the global marketing machine has done a masterful job of rebranding the automobile. By replacing the tailpipe with a battery, manufacturers have successfully framed the electric vehicle as a guilt-free piece of environmental salvation. We are told that buying an EV is an act of pure ecological stewardship. Yet, if one traces the supply chain of these zero-emission miracles back to their true origins, the narrative begins to fracture. To understand the real environmental cost of an EV, one must look beyond the pristine showrooms and delve into the earth itself. The fundamental paradox of the EV is that whilst it doesn't burn fossil fuels on the road, its creation demands an unprecedented, highly destructive onslaught on the natural world. To build the heart of every modern EV, a massive lithium-ion battery pack typically weighing several hundred kilograms, requires an astonishing array of critical transition minerals: lithium, cobalt, nickel, manganese, and graphite. Extracting these resources from the earth is an invasive, chemically intense industrial process that inflicts permanent damage on regional ecosystems. For instance, roughly half of the world's lithium reserves are located in the Lithium Triangle, an arid region spanning parts of Argentina, Chile, and Bolivia. Here, lithium is pumped from vast underground brines beneath salt flats into massive surface evaporation ponds. Producing just 1 ton of lithium requires approximately 2 million liters of water. In one of the driest places on Earth, this causes local water tables to drop precipitously, forcing fresh water from surrounding mountain streams to leak into the depleted underground salt layers. This dries out the natural pastures and wetlands that local communities rely upon for survival. Where lithium drains the landscape, the extraction of cobalt and nickel physically tears it apart. The Democratic Republic of Congo produces the vast majority of the world's cobalt, where large-scale open-cast mines have stripped away thousands of hectares of ancient forest, polluting local river systems with toxic runoff. Similarly, nickel mining, highly concentrated in countries like Indonesia, requires intensive high-pressure acid leaching to process low-grade ores. This process generates millions of tons of highly acidic, toxic slurry that poses a catastrophic threat to marine life when discharged near coastal waters. When a traditional petrol or diesel car rolls off the factory assembly line, it has a relatively modest environmental footprint, generating roughly 5 to 7 tons of carbon dioxide during production. The vast majority of its lifetime carbon emissions will be generated over the next 15 years as it burns fuel on the road. An electric vehicle reverses this dynamic entirely, leaving the factory doors with a massive ecological debt. Because of the extreme energy required to mine raw minerals, transport them across global supply chains, refine them into battery-grade chemicals and manufacture the complex cell structures, the initial manufacturing footprint of an EV is costly, sitting at an estimated 11 to 13 tons of carbon dioxide before it has driven its very first mile. Corporate apologists argue that this initial carbon debt is gradually paid off over the operational life of the vehicle, claiming that after 15,000 to 60,000 miles, depending on whether the electricity grid is powered by renewables or coal, the EV becomes entirely cleaner than an internal combustion engine. This entire corporate math equation is a calculated deception based on a fallacy of carbon accounting. When automotive conglomerates tell the public that a vehicle pays off its ecological debt through clean miles, they are looking strictly at atmospheric carbon dioxide equivalents on a corporate spreadsheet. They are intentionally blinding consumers to a terrifying biological reality: localized, geological destruction is absolute and permanent. Atmospheric carbon is fluid and can theoretically be reabsorbed by the Earth over time, but the destruction of an ecosystem is irreversible. When an open-pit mine strips thousands of hectares of ancient Indonesian rainforest or Congolese habitat, that biodiversity is gone forever. It does not miraculously regenerate in our lifetime just because someone drives an EV to work in a Western city. You cannot treat a dead ecosystem as a financial deficit that can be balanced out later. The true, unmentioned cost of this transition is borne by the frontline communities and native populations who lack the power to fight global corporate interests. In the high Andean salt flats, ancient indigenous groups like the Licanante and Kola peoples watch their ancestral lands dry up as lithium extraction monopolizes their scarce water networks. In places like Cabina Island in Indonesia, indigenous Bajau fishers and seaweed farmers find their primary livelihoods entirely ruined, their pristine waters turned red by nickel silt and toxic runoff. These native populations face land seizures and water scarcity, effectively sacrificed so affluent urban buyers can drive vehicles labeled eco-friendly. Alongside these human populations are the silent, defenseless animals who cannot stand up for themselves. From the endemic Andean flamingos losing their fragile salt lagoon habitats to long-tailed macaques and sea turtles displaced by gutted coastal forests, biodiversity is actively crushed under the weight of the green rush. Furthermore, the corporate narrative relies on the absolute best-case scenario of a flawless, uninterrupted vehicle lifespan. In reality, cars face early scrappage from accidents, electronic failures, or premature battery degradation. If an EV is written off early, its massive upfront environmental deficit is never balanced out. If a battery pack fails and requires a replacement after a few years, the geological debt clock instantly resets, doubling the extraction impact on the Earth before the initial debt was ever settled. Ultimately, this exposes the dead end of corporate green consumerism, which promotes the illusion of infinite growth on a finite planet. Attempting to replace the world's over 1.4 billion conventional vehicles with resource-heavy electric alternatives requires an intensification of global mining that the Earth's crust simply cannot sustain. To call this technology clean is a linguistic sleight of hand designed to protect corporate profits and save the automotive industry rather than the planet. It swaps visible city tailpipe emissions for the distant, invisible devastation of displaced indigenous water supplies, toxic chemical leaching and gutted mountains. If we continue to expand this scope blindly under the banner of corporate propaganda, we face a dystopian trajectory where we exhaust the very crust of our planet, leaving no stones left to overturn, no trees left to synthesize oxygen, and no humans left to drive.